welcome back to the Four Podmen, the wrestling podcast we bring you each and every week on the Dynamo Podcast Network. Head over to YouTube, smash that subscribe and bell notification button. We're also available on Anchor if you prefer the audio version. You'll get us there at Podmen, Spotify, or wherever you pick up your audio podcasts. And tonight I'm joined, as always, by two of my four Podmen. The Road Dog, the D-O-double-G. How are you?
Oh, fuck yeah, baby. Ready to go. Ready to shoot, baby.
And making his return from a sabbatical with that extra knife in the back of his back from Jim the Anvil Neidhart Foundation, Ian the Dynamo Kelly. Ian, how you doing?
I'm coming for you, lads.
Good. We wouldn't have it any
No,
other way.
I'm good, thanks. I actually got a couple of messages from random people after that. You're all right. So I am good. Had a bit of a old wrestling injuries, basically coming back to say hello, and I'm all right. You know, as the Beatles said, "You say goodbye, I say hello." So hopefully it stays like that. Glad to be back, lads.
Good to have you back.
Good. Well, tonight we have a special episode where we're going to be taking a look back at the WWE, WCW, and ECW invasion and alliance, which made for very interesting viewing looking back at it. I think the more I look back at it, the worse it got. But I'll leave that for the podcast. So let's get into this. Like, where do we begin with this? I mean,
I think there's only one place actually, because I saw alumni and friend of the show, obviously Finn Martin, actually posted something up today I seen on Facebook regarding that night on I think it was Nitro when he announced on Raw that he had bought over. Remember the famous Ric Flair promo? And at that time he was using insider terminology that nobody understood what he was talking about. And he was like, "Have you ever done this? Have you ever done this, Vince? Did you ever do that? Your father voted me to be the world champion," all this kind of stuff. And I think that's a great place to start, because that is the most famous. I mean, we can pretty much all remember where we were when that announcement came, and that was the days of, well, there was internet, but I mean, it wasn't for everybody. It was dial-up, and it was mainly an American thing. We got our news in the dirt sheets and whatnot, and that was, well, for me, from my own perspective, I suppose. That's where it all begins for me. Seeing Shane come out at the end of that Nitro and seeing Flair not have the confidence to even wrestle without a t-shirt on and whatnot, you could show it showed the level of morale and confidence, I think, within that group at WCW at that time. And Vince basically bought it for a halfpenny, to steal an Irish term. And yeah, it was. I suppose that's where I would start. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah. It's like you said. It's funny when you see that last WCW, and unfortunately, like you said, it was all the men who wore WCW as opposed to the Bischoff-esque NWO era, the looters and the money grabbers. It was the men who were the spirit and spine of the sport in that particular company before
Sting and Flair, yeah.
Yeah, before the fucking all the before the product was cheapened with an awful lot of gimmicky sensationalism.
Yeah.
And it was those men who were feeling the demise as opposed to the other men who were like, look, we'll just go earn money somewhere else. Whereas the men who put their lot in with Turner and WCW, who felt it the worst, they felt it the most, and I suppose arguably in the end suffered the most. Mm-hmm. What they loved was gone, and they knew it was never going to be the same again. Whereas the boys who rolled into money loot all knew full well that there was paydays coming for them anyway, regardless.
But that's it. I'm sure Niall's going to bring that up, like in terms of the difference with the WCW contracts and then the Time Warner contracts. You know what I mean? And that's kind of, I suppose, what Jay's alluding to as well. Well,
no, I didn't mean even from a business perspective. It's like you said, from the visages of the men on screen. There was men who felt it in their heart the night when it was over. It was the men who loved it more.
I just meant to say like that a lot of the Time Warner contract boys weren't even on the show. Do you know what I mean?
No, they didn't care.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think and looking back, the overriding feeling
Goldberg.
The overriding feeling I got of it looking back on it was that you know, he had a massive desire to buy WCW, but I don't think he put the plan in place accordingly.
No,
when it landed, and I think
no.
that was I think when I look back on it, you look at that situation as it should have been a situation that should have propelled the business forward, and he probably should have made 10 times more than what he made off it. But through I think bad planning, you know, and fan disappointment and a collection of other things, it kind of fell flat on its face. But we kind of started, like it comes in, as you said, we start with Shane in the ring, and the name on the contract's McMahon, Shane McMahon. And then we're kind of off and running in a kind of I would say a kind of a haphazard way, because you kind of get two big companies like this that come together. And the secret would have been to keep them that way. But unfortunately, due to the fact that he didn't land the programming slots that he wanted and various other things, it kind of had to gel and merge together. And it's kind of a situation where it's never the two should meet, really, in terms of
It was a Vince ego project initially, and we knew that, like, we know that the one thing that Vince wanted from this, because he always had the vision of the network, even from the late 80s, early 90s, and he knew that he had that video library. And if he thought he could buy that video library for under $2 million, which is just absolutely insane.
It's absurd, isn't it?
Absolutely absurd. You know what I mean? Like cheaper than some of these boys' contracts. You know what I mean? He would have got Sting and fucking Flair for 2 years on that money. You know, I think Vince, the ego, and especially Vince, was properly full of testosterone back then. You know, that was such a huge victory for him, you know. And I think that that's where Vince really fell flat, I think, in terms of he actually lost his own self and lost his own code in planning, as to where he's usually pretty much spot on and on the ball. And I think Noel, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, that there was just literally no planning from a man that usually has a fucking year-long plan in place, pretty much with everything he does. So, but I mean, at the time, if we can take ourselves back to that, though, I mean, at the time as a fan, you were thinking, oh my God, the possibilities were endless. I think people were playing one of the SmackDowns at the time, and you were able to, you know, they had all the bits and bobs in there where you could make I think that was the one time where you were like, right, fantasy booking here becomes reality. Like, I can put Sting into this game, and Goldberg, and, you know, whoever else. And yeah, like just fucking absolute. I mean, I'm sure you're going to tell the story as we go, but like, I mean, this could have been the greatest period or thing to happen to professional wrestling of all time. Unfortunately, it didn't.
It could have propelled it forward in glory years for another 15 years at least. We wouldn't have to suffer the fucking dregs and the death of a company which must be loved. I mean, any company without competition is no company at all. You come to coast, and I mean, there's a word for it. They call it a Pyrrhic victory. When you lose more in victory than you had to begin with, like, you won. Yeah. But what did you win? At what cost? Like, and essentially that's what it was. It was a Pyrrhic victory, and sad. But again,
I think looking back at it today as well, I got the feeling that you know, not only did he work the WCW guys, because ultimately he just wanted to, you know, smash it to bits, basically, a little bit, to be honest. But I think he
took it personally on that one, didn't he? He took it personally that he lost a few on that one, I think.
Yeah, but I think even looking back at it, I got the feeling that he had sold a different scenario, even to Shane and to Steph, who came into the WCW. And I think they were kind of even sold down the garden path on it, because I think they were sold on the basis that they were going to be separate shows and like separate entities that would feed in. And occasionally on pay-per-views, you'd have kind of crossover, you know, sort of fan matches that fans want, you know, like your Sting versus Taker or whatever it is, you know what I mean? But it just, you know, the one thing about it was, when I looked at it, I felt that it sort of happened a year too early, because I think in order to sort of solidify it and make it real, you know, as much as we kind of detest the kind of stuff that went on with the NWO and stuff like that, but you kind of needed those guys. You needed Flair, you needed the NWO, you needed Sting, you needed Goldberg. And
they had most certainly positioned themselves as a massive draw. There's no question. That's undeniable.
Yeah, because
they're removing merch.
Yeah, because I think if you go back and look at it, I mean, the guys...
Austin was still wrestling at the time, wasn't it? Like, and that was like not about a year or two beforehand. I mean, the big dream match was the two baldy lads that wear just the black pants and the black boots.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So.
And I think once it was announced, the whole WCW thing, I think the fan base got really excited, and that's what their expectation was, that we were going to get Austin and Goldberg, and Taker and
Sting and Taker,
all these, and maybe the NWO versus DX or whatever it is, you know what I mean? So all this fantasy booking, so people were going crazy. But I think the one thing he forgot as well is there is an element of the fan base there that was either purely WWE or WWF at the time or WCW.
Yeah.
And what happened is that WCW fan base tended to fall away very quickly because it just seemed
Southern as well, yeah.
Yeah, but it's seeing its boys and the the workers that it revered just being kind of shat on and belittled and
we lost. There's no bigger picture here. We just lost. What we love is gone.
The problem is, and I'm sure Jay will agree with me on this because I think we've had conversations on this before. We see now, and I know I'm fast forwarding a little bit, but we see now with NXT and with even at that time when they had Ohio Valley and they had Florida Championship Wrestling as well, there was no reason that WCW couldn't have been its own brand at that time in any way, shape, or form. They had the network there, they had the TV license, they had the rights, they could have renegotiated.
The infrastructure, the company was completely all there. It just had no TV slot.
And listen, I mean,
they could have gone on a farewell tour the way rock and roll bands do. One last year in the arenas, come see us, come say goodbye, and that money would have it could have floated them.
But he done his kids a disservice too, as Niall is saying. I mean, Shane at that particular time and Stephanie were being groomed to be the next. That's exactly what Shane should have been given. You are now in charge of this. You're moving down to Atlanta, whether you like it or not. You're doing it, and you're gonna enjoy it. Like, I mean, this one unfortunately is totally on the old man. We're 100 million.
Yeah. I'll tell you how it was. I felt this week. I felt kind of saddened by wrestling this week, going back through the invasion thing and looking at it and all the missed opportunities. And something funny thing, the way history repeats itself. The last time I felt this way was when we had Sting and Hunter at WrestleMania, and they were and it was the same shitty, nasty, belittling type of feeling that ridiculous. I got then as well. You know what I mean? And I just thought there was, and you got to remember, they had some great bona fide stars. They had a great cruiserweight division. There was a lot of really good positive stuff in there that could have been utilised. Even if it was getting absorbed into a single entity, it could have been well utilised.
Can we go to the first match that we had on Raw the following week where we had Buff Bagwell, that famous Buff Bagwell Booker T match? Yeah. I've went back and I've watched that 3 times this week, believe it or not. 3 fucking times. I should have watched it 5 times from my man Booker. But I gave him 3, right? And I have to say, I watched the match back and, everyone knows the narrative around it. And Niall, I'm sure you'll be able to kind of put some narrative around it for people that don't know what we're talking about. But essentially, do you want to start with that, Niall, actually?
No, fire away. Go on, you're okay. On there, so fire away.
Yeah, so basically, just to give people a little bit of context on this, it was the first kind of WCW match on Raw where these two boys, were going to wrestle. I mean, Buff Bagwell, look, he was a hokey, bit of a jabroni type character, but at the same time, he had his place. And he was, in my opinion, sometimes a little bit of an underrated worker. I watched his work from the early 90s as a young stud rookie. And he could work, in fairness. And he was definitely the goofball.
He wasn't without charisma, which is important.
He definitely wasn't without charisma. He had a fucking amazing body. He had the hat and the gimmick that he came out with and all. I thought he looked great. Hanging around with Steiner as well, back in the late 90s didn't hurt him in any way, shape, or form. And he was in there with Booker T. So basically, essentially, what happened there was that WWE had taken on some of the contracts, but took on the lesser contracts. So this was penny pinching on Vince. Again, another issue that Vince had in this period, in my opinion, because they had the money there and the potential fucking return was just astronomical if they'd have bought out some of these Time Warner contracts. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. The match itself, one was kept, and it was Booker T. And basically, Buff Bagwell was told the next week in Raw that he had no future at the company, and told by Jim Ross. And I think Jim Ross done it in a bit of an underhanded way too. Could have done it in a nicer way. Not that I have any issues with Jim Ross, but I don't think his management style on this particular occasion was good. And I watched the match back. It wasn't that bad. Do you know what I mean? It was a lot better than watching Naked Midian. And it was a lot better than watching fucking, some of these guys, it was much better than watching Del Wilkes fucking wrestle some random lad too as the Patriot or whatever. It was a decent match. Like, it was not as bad as it was portrayed. And I think they needed a scapegoat. And I think, for whatever Jim Ross had up his ass about Buff Bagwell, just he was the first one to be made an example of, when realistically Buff Bagwell was kind of a character that you do remember from watching in WCW. You know what I mean? It's not your top guy you think of, but it's a character and someone that stands out because of the body and as Jay said, he had the bells and whistles.
There was a value to him.
I believe so. 100%. And I think he should have been kept on. I don't think the match was as bad as people say. They were working. This comes back to Vince McMahon. They're not working a WWE style.
Yeah.
Well, dude, I mean, they're coming from the South here, where they're actually they're working. They're actually working as wrestlers the way they were taught.
Well, you could almost say, and sorry for interrupting, you can almost say it was the birth of Vince working his own fans, as he has done for the last 20 years. He at some stage he stopped working to work for us and start working us.
Yeah.
And he's like, what, they want this to happen? We'll see about that. I was like, no, that's not the way you run a company.
No.
That's like McDonald's whipping their fucking quarter pounders off the menu because people like them.
Yep. Agreed.
Forgive me. Come in again.
And the funny thing is, I remember listening to an interview with Buff Bagwell 2 weeks later. The Raw that they had was booked to be in Atlanta. So he said, like, it was, and this is why Buff Bagwell is no fool. And I'm not the world's biggest Buff Bagwell fan by any stretch of the imagination, but at the same time, I'm fair. And he said, look, can we not just hold this off till we do it in Atlanta? Because if we do it in Atlanta, boom, we're made. Do you know what I mean? And it's good for business. But no, Vince wasn't thinking about business at that time. As I said, Vince had a hard on because he bought the fucking company from Ted Turner.
Because he won.
Because he won. But the thing is, did he really win? Because Ted Turner was still sitting on more money than Vince had. Like, you know what I mean? It was just the Time Warner merger happened to kind of throw that out the window. But so again, it kind of comes, and this is going to be a narrative throughout the show. And as I said, I think it's Vince's biggest mistake in his whole wrestling career, personally, with his handling of this situation. And I think that match is case in point. It was like, I'm going to punish guys just because I can, and it showed bully tactics from Vince.
You served against me in the war. You'll never be one of mine.
Yeah, it was just bully boy tactics from Vince that I thought showed kind of not a very nice side to Vince, which I know there's no, kind of brownie points for being a nice guy in business or anything like that. But at the same time, I just think his handling of that particular situation showed how this was going to go.
It's kind of ironic when you see as well now from this perspective, looking back at everything you just said, he did. It's just the contradiction in terms that is Vince. You look at his fucking worship of Goldberg. He's almost like the hood ornament of a car that he told. He's like his Rolls Royce insignia. He has this fucking unbelievable love and respect and belief that Goldberg, a man who concusses himself before he's given the massive spotlight, is all that he's ever wanted from the whole company, and the rest is just disposable fodder.
But you see, the funny thing is, though, Jay, he like in Vince's mind, like, I think he's quite an insane man. You have to be to be that successful. He took Bill out of Goldberg, so therefore he's ours. We changed his music around a little bit, therefore he's ours. Oh, we made him wear biker shorts instead of shorts when he first came in, therefore he's ours. Vince actually thinks like this. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I've made those little subtle changes to Goldberg, and now he's my creation. No, he's the worst creation ever, other than the fact that he looks great because he's a fucking hazard to wrestlers.
Botch Oldberg, yeah.
Yeah. So but Jesus Christ, when you think about it, he killed one of Vince's fucking projects in Brett, and he nearly killed Vince's greatest project in Taker. So I agree with you. That's a very good point.
Yeah, I think it was it was symptomatic really of the narrative being pushed out there straight away. I mean, we hear the stories as well of how unwelcoming the locker room was as well, and all these kind of things, and how they were, belittled in real life, apart from the wrestling business. You know what I mean? Like, these guys were made feel awful. And the problem that you had there as well is a lot of these guys, not to excuse the pun, but they were mid-card guys as well. So they wouldn't be used to be going up against a locker room there that's like, maybe Austin and Taker and guys like this, you know what I mean? These guys, would have had that sort of barrier of sort of Sting and Hogan and Flair originally in their WCW locker room.
And Hall and Nash, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, even so, in terms of, in terms of stature of superstar, to be able to be kind of Teflon to the protection of that, I'm sure they felt very exposed and very unwanted. And, you know what I mean? I suppose they believed unless you were a really, really good worker and you needed to be there and you felt you could come through, you know what I mean? I think you were looking at it going, this isn't for me. You know what I mean? How do we figure this out? You know what I mean? Like, I've basically been brought up here to take a whipping that's been coming for the last 8 to 10 years or whatever it is. You know what I mean?
Isn't it ironic that the egotistical maniac that is Scotty Steiner was probably one of the first ones to cop exactly how it was going to play out? I mean, he's not known for his foresight as a human, but he kind of seen it all coming early on. Like, he's like, whatever.
Yeah, he was I'm not working, because he was the first one to talk about H, because I mean this was at the height of H's politics, you know what I mean? Probably not his finer side, and he probably admit that now as an older man, you know what I mean? But Steiner was like, I'm gonna actually box the head off this lad if I don't get out of this company. and basically Triple H wouldn't have had a fucking leg to stand on if they came into that. Yeah. Literally wouldn't have had a leg to stand on, because Scotty would have just taken it out.
And to be perfectly honest with you, it wasn't too long before Triple H was walking down to the fucking ring wearing chainmail-esque fucking garb in his intro either. Do you know what I mean? It was like
very true. Yeah.
But
makes that Cody Tron smash not so bad when you think about it.
Yeah. I often do an analogy to it where I say, if you're gonna run down that hill in Braveheart, you better have William Wallace running down the hill with you.
Very true.
Otherwise,
it
doesn't work.
Yeah, very good.
If you're Sean O'Hare, Lance Storm, Chuck Palumbo, and Chris Canyon, you're gonna have a problem.
Maybe it'll be all right, lads. It's not going to be okay. Look at Scotty Steiner; he's not happy.
Yeah, but Scott Steiner kind of stood to the side. He was neither Alliance or he was neither Invasion. He was out there sailing on the wind on his own. And if anyone said that, they were getting upended.
And he had done his bit of time in the Fed as well back in the mid-90s too. And so I'd say
he was familiar with a few of the men backstage, and they all knew to give him a wide berth. It's like, don't fuck with Scott. He's an angry man. Also, don't ask him to do your maths homework.
Yeah, I sort of looked at it as well, and I was thinking, like, you'd Booker T there and you'd DDP, and they kind of lended a little bit of credence to the Invasion. But then,
except for the DDP fucking gimmick.
Yeah, but then remember, then the way they were both booked, they were just absolutely wiped out.
You're right. They were optimistically willing to embrace their new future, unbeknownst to them.
Yeah, that it was very quickly they got an understanding of what was ahead.
Hey, Booker, you think Scotty's right? No, man, Scotty's never been right. Let's try this. It could be fun.
I got a real good laugh today when I watched DDP getting pinned by Taker's missus. And I just thought, oh my God.
Ex-missus and all.
Yeah.
Doesn't even mean that anymore. Can Peacock watch that one out for the travesty it is?
Let's be honest, it didn't mean that then either.
Pinned by a divorce settlement.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I was like, there's actually Peacock are trying to get rid of everything at the moment, as we know. It's like, well, let's forget about all the, other stuff of Greg Valentine back in the day, just speaking from a southern mind. Let's take the real travesty out. DDP. Positive page getting fucking pinned.
I'm a stalker now. You're a what now?
That's not a bad thing. That's a good.
Was that any wonder he found yoga? Wrestling wasn't.
You know
gonna
what?
Be for
I
him.
have to shout out to DDP though, because when you think about it, like a man, and apparently even back then, he didn't get too down about it. They were saying like he literally is the most positive motherfucker on the planet. Like, do you know what I mean? Just I'm working for WWE. I'm on good money. Fuck it. You know.
Well, that's his approach to life, isn't it? You want me to work with David Arquette? Sure, no problem. He seems like a nice guy.
Yeah.
Jesus, time and
he knew that Hall of Fame ring was coming.
But don't forget, like DDP got into the business when he was my age now. You know what I mean? So anything was
when he wasn't driving Greg Valentine around in an open top Cadillac.
talking smack probably about certain cultural issues, I'm sure.
Some people would have a theory that he got out of the business pretty soon after that. But that's neither here nor there, you know. So we kind of as if the mix isn't bad enough and the WCW fans are pissed and exiting the building, if you like. We get down the road of the Alliance and we throw our ECW friends in and Paul Heyman, and Steph comes out. Steph, of all people, comes out as the leader of the ECW brand within the Alliance. So now we have Shano, we have Steph, you know, who looks like she's still rocking the leathers from the DX era when she was going up against the dad and siding with Triple H. And then we have Paul Heyman in there, who's just cracking lacquer. And off we go then with the Alliance. So someone had an idea going, we'll throw the ECW guys in there. That'll prop it up if we're not getting these guys from Time Warner and AOL.
That must have been a lovely meeting. What do you mean there's other contracts?
yeah. What the hell would we want Goldberg and Sting in here when we have RVD and the Dudleys and Tommy Dreamer and all these?
I don't even think it was like that. I even think back then it was a case of fuck off, Tommy Dreamer. Just fuck off, will you?
Yeah. No one.
I'm here too, guys. Fuck off. Who invited Dreamer?
So then that doesn't kind of go to plan either, and there's a bit of a disaster. So someone came up with the brainwave. We're gonna get the hottest guy in there at the moment in WWE, and we're gonna tell people that he defected. And off goes Stone Cold Steve Austin to the Alliance, the most over guy in the business and the most revered man in the fan base. And you're going to try and sell the fan base the idea that he's just gone to the other side. So that was kind of
this is after his Hogan angle as well, isn't it?
Too many Steve Weisers. It's like the three of them sat down and lost Steve Austin in a game of poker.
Because I mean, they tried to do the double swerve that they'd done in 1994 with the Tonka and Lex Luger at SummerSlam '94. If you remember, they thought that it was Lex Luger that sold out to the $1 Million Man, but it was actually the Tonka in the end. To which I actually
too soon.
To which I sent an angry letter to WWE at that time, which is very funny, very left wing of me. And I turned around and said, "Oh yeah, you make the Indian the bad guy. What's that about? The Native American selling out on his own bloody people." But I just thought that reminded me of that because they done that with Austin. Because before that, he was just hugging Vince McMahon, and him and Kurt Angle. I mean, I suppose they had some of the best funniest backstage promos with Jimmy Crackcorn and all that kind of stuff, and Kumbaya, and you know, Vince would do that. Or Austin would do that hug on Vince and do the tap, and the eyes would just be like, "I love you, man."
Yeah, so it was just kind of like no one accepted that straight away. That was that ship had sailed.
No one accepted it ever.
Well, in fairness to Steve as well, he had run out of companies to work for after his mouth had run its course. So he was like, whatever you need me to do, WW, I'll do it because I already work for these guys. And, you know, one didn't have a shower and the other had a bunch of imbeciles at the top. So I'm on WW for life. I'll bleed Vince blood.
Yep.
I'll do what you want. Just don't make me go back.
Yeah.
So then we head off to Survivor Series, which some people call was the death of the Invasion and the Alliance that night. A very, very strange pay-per-view where it was just like, this is Vince at his absolute belittling nastiness. And the whole thing kind of went to pot. And then it was a case of trying to figure out, so where do we go? I have this whole clusterfuck of roster and people and talent under contract. What am I going to do? So he tries to recreate, in some respects, the Monday Night Wars internally and goes with the brand split. And we start developing these things like drafts and stuff like that.
You know, he was trying to do the draft lotteries and all, wasn't he? He was trying to cash in on the NFL and NBA and NHL and all, yeah.
Yeah, but I think the big mistake he made when your competition gets cannibalized, it's impossible to recreate what went on in the past when people are clued into what's unraveling in front of their eyes. And that really kind of sums up a lot of the invasion and the alliance and what went on. I had a look at some, I looked at kind of, I tried to pick out 4 or 5 good things and bad things that happened during that time, because I tried to be a little bit positive.
I have one.
Yeah, well, go on, shoot your one then. Give me your one.
I think Chris Jericho came out on top in the whole invasion angle, because we knew Kurt Angle was kind of already there as one of the top guys, and I think at that time Chris Jericho was a guy that was kind of teetering on the brink, and you were kind of like behind Jericho going, actually give this lad his moment now. Do you know what I mean? Because he does deserve. He can hang with the Rock on promos. He can hang with a lot of these guys. Give him his fucking due. And in fairness, on the Invasion pay-per-view, the fact that they beat the Rock and Austin in one night, as Jay so aptly put it, one night in Dublin City Centre while he was getting stopped by Jay's own security.
Do you know who he is?
Do you know who that man is?
I don't give a fuck who he is. He doesn't smoke on my bar. Yeah. I don't think he knows which country he's in.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that he's only 5'9". The fact is, he's about twice the width, and he's the first ever undisputed champion. So, I mean, I thought that was a very, very cool scene for me as a wrestling fan, and I suppose as a Chris Jericho fan. I'll always remember, holding the chair and the first one was the chair and the belt when he beat The Rock for his first WCW one, which was great. But for him, I think we all believed at that time watching it, because it wasn't a time where you could really call it, you thought, right, The Rock, Angle, or Austin are winning, Jericho isn't. And then when you saw Jericho go into the final one with, I think it was The Rock, wasn't it? Or was it Austin? It was The Rock. Yeah. You were kind of going, okay, like this is set up for The Rock to win now. But no, Jericho getting the victory there. I thought that was something very positive. And I think again, fucking Triple H was the only thing that ruined Jericho's undisputed championship run.
Another case of the boss putting the money on the right horse for all of his inane and insane fucking decisions. He knows when he sees it. He knows when there's a sure money thing. And it was Aunt Jericho had proved after they put all of the fucking gold around them, it was the right horse to bet on.
Yeah, just the wrong decisions going into Mania. Yeah, we can all agree on that, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
And look, like I say, I'm not being bad on Triple H. I like him now. It's just
he was a different human back then. He was an asshole. He was drunk on his own bullshit.
Not a nice person back then. Yeah,
it's interesting when you look back then and you think, even when we spoke about the narrative of Vince and all, even his push to even try and belittle the big gold belt in the way it was getting booked. I mean, there was one where it was won and then it was dropped again the following week and all. And you think about the history of the belt and how, like, for years it stayed on people through the NWA era and all and stuff like that. And just thought,
they gave it to CM Punk because they thought it wouldn't be a big deal. Do you know what I mean? Like, everyone got excited when Punk won at that time at the Money in the Bank, and it was like, no, like, or he beat Edge, for it when he cashed in his Money in the Bank, and it was like, this fucking loser, what's he ever going to do in WWE? Oh, guess what, Vince? It's another person that you didn't bet on, that Triple H told you not to go with. And guess what he's had to do? Probably making you most money since Stone Cold Steve Austin.
He went and got fucking over, didn't he?
Are we sure Triple H is the right man for the job, or has he actually calmed down?
But again, there's another thing as well. There's another thing. Look, I know in recent times, again, this is just a side note, a caveat on this conversation. It's ironic that the word prop is thrown around so often, but there's nothing you can do to diminish the lineage of something so fucking stunningly beautiful. Like, you got to put that belt around the bleeding Brooklyn Brawler and it still hold the weight itself.
I'd agree with that. I'd agree with that.
It doesn't matter. You can't erase history and you can't undo its prestige.
I think it, along with the Winged Eagle and the 10 pounds, they are the three most beautiful belts of all time. That's what I think of when I think of wrestling, you know.
Well, you know what? You're going to be shocked. I'll surprise you now. I don't have the Winged Eagle anywhere near me top three. If I was to say top three belts in the history of the business of all time, I'd say Big Gold. Yeah, listen, wherever you go,
I like that.
It is. So. It's stunning. Wherever you go at the end of this life, whether it be Valhalla, hell, or wherever you have to kneel in front of is going to be wearing that strap. And that's
a quick segue, Jay. Like, you guys remember from reading the mags back in the day, like, a lot of people weren't into it. You know what I mean? A lot of people were.
I'll never get that. I think maybe there was a transitionary period where it took the world a time to catch up with how beautiful Big Gold was. Because again, like you said, my number two, the 10 pounds, it's a stunning belt. It is. Yeah. It's the anvil that wrestling was forged on, and to go from an NWA belt into a new creation, which was ornate, beautiful. It looked like something Elvis used to wear on the shitter. I mean, physically speaking, that belt is resplendent. It's the Sistine Chapel of metallic artwork on in this business. It's a lot of people would have held. Look, the old wrestling fans before the internet, before we were so quick to develop and understand and appreciate new changes, there's legacy and legacy is an anchor, and people don't like change. And it was a stunning belt. There was nothing like it before and nothing like it since. In the history of belts, I don't believe that there's ever been a step up, like, just from a visual perspective. Like, it's fucking gorgeous. Like, but again, 10 pounds is a very understated belt. It's a very simplistic time and place belt. It's a 60s and 70s thing. It's almost relic like. To see it worn again now with such prestige is beautiful. It's like its image haunts pro wrestling. It's never going away. It'll always be a specter in the background doing something and elevating men to the next level in private companies of belts. I mean, but if you get to wear 10 pounds around your waist, you're something special, regardless, even still to this day. Like, and for me, it's not the Winged Eagle.
Shopkeeper,
go on.
Do me a favor, shopkeeper. Take our first break after what I'm going to say here, in response to that, because I do like that. Take our first pause for the cause. In response to what Jay said, I agree with everything he said, absolutely everything. But in response to one thing that he said was, it was the anvil of it. It wasn't the anvil to the tag team that he's so permissibly pushed on me last week while I was laid out on my back.
Whoa. Hottest tag in the business, baby. And I was just speaking for a voice that's seldom heard.
I love it. Hey, you're never gonna hear a bad word about the anvil from me either.
No, man. But you don't hear enough words about him, and that's what last week was about. His time to shine. A little spotlight on the ginger lunatic. You know what I mean? The original Fringe.
Yeah. A man who can bench 500 fucking pounds deserves that fucking.
He'd probably drink 500 pounds as well. Fucking legend.
Yeah.
We very quickly recognized the easy target on last week's show. So with that, we'll take a quick break and we'll be back again shortly. Welcome back to the Three Podmen. And before the break, lads, we were talking about the significance of the Big Gold and the 10 pounds. And Jay, you wanted to expand a little bit on that again. You want to talk?
Oh yeah, Jesus! But just as a little interesting caveat, Ian, you brought up the Winged Eagle.
Yeah,
I think honestly, my favorite wrestling belt of all time, again, is probably because of the time when I grew up watching the sport, and I still call it a sport, is probably the IC. the champ's champ, like, you know what I mean, the workers belt.
Not a bad show.
You know,
Not a bad show.
Yeah.
Not a bad show. Yeah. Look, I'd agree with that. I think I love the Winged Eagle as well, just purely because I suppose, again, Jay, especially for you and me, like, that would have been our time growing up. That was our, that was our belt.
Well, I grew to be frustrated with it, obviously, for obvious reasons.
Sure. Yeah. But I think, I mean, you're not going to get an argument from me with the IC belt. I mean, I thought even when they brought the European belt in the late 90s in, I thought it was still a beautiful belt.
Yeah, I think the different versions of the Winged Eagle.
Parks.
There was a couple of different versions of the Winged Eagle. Jay, you were talking about one.
Oh God, the dual plated, yes, stunning. That's an exception. That's a caveat to a caveat to a caveat.
The gold with the silver, that Macho held.
Yes,
was a beautiful version of it.
For the IC one.
No, the Winged Eagle.
The Winged Eagle had a dual plated version. Macho had it.
It did, and so did the IC actually. Remember, we had the red in the WWF in red on the split plates as well, and on the top plate too. Yeah,
I think my favorite version of the Winged Eagle, though, was the one that Sean won in Montreal. That was a beautiful belt.
It was a stunning belt.
Was it?
And it has never held as much gravity and weight as that night in the sport.
Well, that's called that. Unfortunately, guys, you called it a sport, and unfortunately, that's the one night that it wasn't a sport.
Oh! VAR was in play, was it?
VAR was in play.
Listen, with the level of corruption in sport at the moment, that was all sport.
The last honest
you know what? How many lads get to say they knocked out their boss? You know what I mean? So it's all good. It's all good. I mean, I'd take that victory.
Well, I mean, most men have worked in the bar trade, I'd say.
Yeah, true enough. Yeah, true
so
enough.
let's segue back to the actual podcast, and let's have a chat. Looking back on the Alliance and the invasion, anything stand out to you, men, in terms of positivity that came out?
Well, we went with Jericho. Yeah, I actually wanted to ask you your thoughts on that, actually, lads, because I know you two boys are big Jericho-holics. So I think I just thought that was the main positive to come out of it in terms of a new star emerging.
Yeah, I think if you go back to the start, obviously the blockbuster announcement was fantastic, but then obviously it failed to deliver. But I thought that whole announcement, and with Vince there and Shane, down in Panama City in Florida, and the name on the contract,
living it up, I'd say.
Yeah, but I thought that was brilliant the way they did that, and it did give you that feeling that they were going to set out the stall as kind of two organizations within one, with the father and son battling against each other. But unfortunately, It's kind of not really what we got. The other thing I thought that came out of it that was positive, I think the cruiserweight division, I thought got a decent.
They tapped in. Yeah, they tapped in on that. Yeah.
Those boys found their place, and obviously, I think Ric Flair coming in as well. I think when Ric Flair did.
But we mentioned that though on this podcast before. That's one thing that and we are going to be doing an episode, I think, next week on Eric Bischoff anyway. Now that he's announced into the Hall of Fame, so that'll be an interesting one, and we can speak more in depth about the cruiserweight division on that, because the world owes fucking Eric Bischoff a ton of credit for that. Like, at the end of the day, credit where it's due. But I have one actually, Noel. When Vince is starting to go a bit fucking loony on the show, and he's like, "I'm gonna kill my own creation, me, in the NWO." And he turns around and he has the NWO on the back of the chair. That is one time I marked out, because that's when I went, right, there's no way he can have the NWO without three boys at least. It has to be Hogan, it has to be Hall, and it has to be Nash. But we knew at least Hogan was coming in, right? Surely, when we saw it as NWO Hogan. You know what I mean? And I know Jay would have no problem with that, even, to be fair.
No, I have to admit, look, I'm weak for the NWO Hogan. I think he finally grew into the person he was for years, when he was telling us to train in the person of vitamins, but cheating his way continually for fucking 10 years to the top. I'm like, now you're honest.
Now you can be entertained by it. Exactly. Like, so I think for me, that was a huge standout moment, because that was when we got some elements of the real WCW.
Yeah. Be yourself, Hogan.
I think the fear at the time with the way it had all gone down with the contracts and all stuff like that, the fear was that we were going to get the likes of Conan coming in or something as the NWO, and it was just going to go down again.
Like I'd have taken Kurt Hennig coming in with fucking Vincent. You know what I mean? I could have dealt with that. Vincent selling his VHSs at the side of a train every now and then wouldn't have really fucking appealed to me, but I wouldn't have been against it. But then when we actually got the three boys, well, no, we got two and a bleeding alcoholic, but that's what we got in the end. Fuck you, Scott Hall.
Yeah. The one thing.
Although I'd love to drink with the man, to be fair. I love you, Scott.
So long as he's paying.
Not anymore.
Unlikely now.
I wouldn't encourage you.
Do you want a drink, Scott? Here, have a drink.
No. Just do this yoga. The one thing that did come out of it that I really liked, and we have a love affection here for Kurt Angle on this podcast.
Yes.
We got the Milk-O-Mania, which I thought was just crazy. And it was just one of those iconic moments that we obviously visit.
There's a figure made out of that now and everything. Like, I mean, that's how you know it's iconic when that happens.
Whole place.
Whole place.
Yeah. I suppose that, if we look at highlight some of the bad things, I mean, we alluded to some of them already. I mean, clearly there was too many titles and too many belts floating around. I think the whole DDP versus Undertaker thing was just disastrous.
It was fucking distasteful. Like, it was just weird.
Very much so, Jay.
I think obviously we spoke about it already, but trying to convince us of Austin batting for the other side was a bit of a stretch, to say the least.
Yeah, he tried working for them and it didn't work then. Now
we
believe he wants to work for them again.
We mentioned the NWO when we got one of the greatest main events that wasn't a main event in the history of WrestleMania, though, of course.
Yeah.
Like actual working and the old soldier basically giving the rub to the future, which was obviously Hogan and The Rock. I mean, I've watched that match back. I've watched it with Jim Cornette commentary. I've watched it in my own time again. Good Lord, that is just as the Warrior Hogan was one of the greatest WrestleMania matches of all time. And again, not a whole huge amount of bumps. Fair enough, The Rock is in his fucking spring chicken days, so he can bump like a motherfucker, of course. He can sell that fucking big boot and do his double flip afterwards or whatever. Not as bad as Michael's, but
not far off.
Yeah, not far off it. But
speaks well of The Rock as a person as well, that he was business above everything else, and still is to this day. I mean, he took a match other men didn't want and made a career highlight out of it.
But that's it. Like, I mean, like we can give Austin all the props, and you're not going to find many bigger Stone Cold Steve Austin fans than me. But like Stone Cold's ego at that time was still so big. Well, I'm not losing to Hogan, and Hogan's going, well, if he's not losing to me, then I'm not losing to him. But Hogan showed that he was willing to do the job in this particular piece of business. I think. No, but in fair is fair, Jay. I think he would have done the job for Austin too if the story was right, because he'd done it for The Rock. Why wouldn't he do it for Austin? You know what I mean? They're both.
Yeah, listen, you never know with Terry. You just never know.
You don't. I'd agree with you there. I would 100% agree with you there. But I also think Austin probably didn't make the best case for himself too, because there was a bit of beef there, and Austin was probably mouthy about
it. But history also says that maybe in Austin's respect, Austin wasn't wrong. For Terry to look at a man, look at a man like Austin, as over as he was still a guy who walked out and, shit all over fucking WCW because they didn't know what they had in him, and he had to go to WCW to ascend, so to speak. And they already had Sean, and Sean had been proven time and time again who he was and what he was. And, that don't work for me, brother. We were supposed to get 3 and we only got 1. And the reason that Sean gave fucking Hot Dog another career highlight is because, okay, you want 97, Sean, you can
go back to was it Austin that done the Bret Hart Hall of Fame induction, and the two of them basically blanked Terry. They just refused to shake his hand as he walked by. Same thing as Jay just said, like you're talking about Bret and Michaels, probably the two greatest to ever do it. Same thing happened to Brett in '92.
Oh yeah, but there's legacy lineage. I mean, the job that fucking Brett did with Austin put both of them over so hard. It lent an essence of credibility and realism to the sport, whereas Hogan rolls in with his cartoon persona, and they're almost two different styles and genres that will not mesh.
Well, let's look at it without getting into too much of that. Let's get into the actual match, though. In fairness, when we talk about the match itself, again, this is like Hogan's Mania moment, and Rock, obviously, just like it was with Warrior and Hogan, and the fact that it's in the same building, you're like, shit. I got to see the next day. I got to see the first one with the Warrior the next day on VHS because I was too young to fucking, to watch it, and I got to watch it, and it felt like I was watching it live. But this one, I get to watch live, and good Lord, the electricity created from that. I mean, that to be honest with you guys, that can be a podcast in itself. That whole match, and
it was an apex. It was an apex moment in professional wrestling globally.
You could educate lads.
It's anniversary coming up next week, ironically enough.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we could sit here and educate lads and girls on getting your shit in. I guarantee you, nothing that Kenny Omega and the Rainmaker done will ever create that electricity that was done with looks that was called on the fly at that time. And in fairness, that was Terry's fucking call. Look to the side, look to the other side. And The Rock said it. He goes, when I was in there, that's when I realized how to be a star. Do you know what I mean? And how to get over with the crowd without doing anything. And I think that's another good thing to come out of it, Niall, to answer your question in a long-winded way. That's phenomenal. And we got to see Austin and a drunk Scott Hall. I believe Scott Hall was drunk that night, wasn't he? Austin said he didn't appreciate wrestling that night because
yeah.
Yeah, I think when you look back at that match and you see the intensity of the crowd and everyone on their feet, and there's just flashlights going off and everything is just exploding, and it's, as you said, the electricity in the building was unbelievable in terms of that.
It came through the telly, didn't it? It came through the telly.
Yeah, and you know, not only that, you obviously had a crowd there that would have been a staunch. You know, you would have had your WCW crowd there, your lifers and all that were there holding on to that moment, trying to, you know, and then you would have had Rock there as well, and you know, that WWE crowd there as well. And it was kind of, you nearly got the feeling within the audience there when you were watching it that the audience were nearly, you know, one side against the other kind of thing. You know?
But not really, Niall. When you go back and watch that, right? As I said, I watched it a couple of times on different narratives. It started out as a Rock crowd. And then all of a sudden, the kids that grew up with their fathers probably loving Hogan or their brothers loving Hogan, it turned because Hogan's kind of, the psychology,
he came home.
Exactly. The psychology within that match was unbelievable because then Hogan gave The Rock the robe again. And then they get into The Rock. And now they're split by the end of it. There's 3 stages of that match. And in wrestling, pretty much you want the 2 stages. You want fucking one being people know who the heel are, people know who the babyface are, and that's it. And, you know, it's very, very difficult to create that 3rd stage where you can turn them because that's psychology. That's literally what you're doing with looks, with moves, with feeling sympathy, with garnering sympathy from
the build of tension. It's over, under, over. There's nothing complicated about masterful wrestling.
Nothing.
It's more than move. This is the problem with the contemporary the product. People seem to think that we watch it because of moves. Anybody can do moves. I could take 5 professional dancers, give them to a quality instructor, and like in two nights, I'd say 2 days of training, I could orchestrate an amazing move-filled match. I mean, this is not what pro wrestling is about. It's storytelling. The primary subject, the primary source of entertainment for pro wrestling is to tell a story. You're compressing an hour and a half of a motion picture, a movie, into 20 to 40 minutes. Now, look, I know the man's weaknesses. Everybody does, his limitations. And we spoke about one of the earliest apex of professional wrestling globally is Warrior Hogan. It had fucking nothing to do with moves. It was telling a story.
Yeah.
It was the passing of a torch. And regardless of whether or not how I feel about Hulk Hogan, that couldn't happen with any other man in the ring.
Yeah.
And it's the same with Hogan, with The Rock and Hogan. Whether we like it or not, he might have been off in the abyss or off in Hollywood or coming and going, but he spent a long time away from where he was home, and it was one man who made him. And on that night, he came home. It was the prodigal son who returned, and
that's the perfect way of looking at it. And like the sympathy garnered at the end with Hogan holding the ribs, because I think he legit busted his rib that night, didn't he? Yeah. You know, and
with him, you'll never know. And
I believe it was true. Well, I think it was true on this night because that's when they had proper trainers. Like it wasn't the old school Hogan era where I'm gonna be back, brother.
Well, if it's at like the car case, Hulk Hogan probably busted his ribs, but Terry Bollea didn't.
Well, I'm gonna say fuck Bubba the Love Sponge.
Size matters.
Fuck Bubba the Love Sponge. I hope Bubba the Love Sponge is sitting as miserable somewhere in fucking Florida as he possibly can.
I'm all right with him.
Or as the Iron Sheik calls him, Bubba Lover the Sponge. Fuck you, motherfucker. Bubba Lover the Sponge.
Listen, he got the truth out of Hogan. Hand on the Bible, whether or not, you know, size matters. And apparently the judicial system of America.
We all know Hogan's not a racist, unfortunately. That's
nothing to do with racism. I'm talking about him putting his hand on his Bible and talking about his 10-inch dong.
I mean, he definitely had a 10-inch dong. For anyone who wants to see
Hulk
it, somewhere else. Yeah,
Hulk Hogan has.
Yeah,
Terry
not the Sheik.
Don't.
Not the Sheik.
You probably missed that bit of his court case, did you?
I didn't see that.
Yeah, well, let's just say he was made to tell the truth.
Yeah. It made you feel like
for all the American fans out there, Hulk Hogan actually won that court case. So let's just.
Did he? Another Pyrrhic victory.
We plead the
he might have walked out
one.
a richer man, but he
Jay
didn't
has
walk out
been
a bigger
muted
man.
here. Don't listen to him. He's gonna get us in trouble.
Do you know what we're talking about?
Yeah, I'm talking about the one where the man had a dual penis, and the one wrapped in red and yellow was 10 inches, and the other one was only about 6.
Well, he says, Ian, it came out during the court case, and he had to put his hand on the Bible and swear, and they asked him about his manhood and how he used to boast in the past about how Hulk Hogan is huge. And in the courtroom, in front of the world, in front of the Lord, he had to explain that it was all kayfabe, and that, you know, Hulk Hogan is hung, brother. Terry Bollea ain't.
and it went as far as saying that Hulk Hogan and Terry Bollea are not the same person.
Not the same person.
No way.
Yeah.
Yes.
Have you not watched Nobody Speaks? Man,
no, I need to watch this.
Man, watch
It was the death of kayfabe.
I need to watch
it was the death of a lot of things.
Guys.
Oh man, absolutely. And then you'll hit us up later and laugh, and it was incredible to watch.
Let's just say when he got off the stand, his lawyer was let's just say they had a different. Now you better keep telling me the actual truth and not this Hulk Hogan Terry Bollea shit, because I can't defend you if you're going to keep lying about your manhood and then confess on the stand.
So what was it? So basically, Hulk Hogan. Well, I mean, Hulk Hogan didn't come out on TV and tell people that he had a fucking 10-inch dong. But
on the stand, he had to confess that he did.
Well, I've never heard him say that to me. I don't know whether it's...
Well, let me tell you something, brother.
Let me tell you something, little
26-inch pythons.
It was one of those moments when I thought about Jay and Jay going, I knew it all along.
What was I telling you?
What did I tell you since 1985?
You wouldn't listen.
Let's get back to the match. Talking about Hulk Hogan's dong.
Yeah.
The things I definitely didn't believe.
Hogan talked about it. We didn't. It's not something
I know. That's what I'm saying. It's like
it was wrote into state's evidence. Somebody had to sit there typing this shit out.
You're soiling a 36-year-old man's fucking childhood. I love it.
Do you know what I mean? Like this is official evidence and a judicial procedure. We're not making this up. This isn't slander or accusation. Hogan had to take the stand and confess to having a little dick.
Well, I saw the video, although he's a big man, so therefore, you know.
I didn't see the video. I wouldn't go that far.
Oh, I got sent a video from a mutual friend of ours, Jason.
That's weird.
Well, the weirdest thing is that you live with him. Anyway, let's move right along.
Consider yourself evicted.
From parts unknown.
Unknown parts.
Unknown.
Yeah, unknown
Unknown
parts.
parts. Unknown
Very good.
sizes. Anyway, we digress.
Right. Let's once again bring it back to the podcast.
Where are we?
Let's
Oh, yeah, the 10 pounds of gold.
now we've moved on from that now.
10 pounds of balls, yeah.
It was only £6.
10 pounds of sperm.
2.5 pounds
of
alive, brother.
Let's
did
get
you
into
say?
let's get into some of the hot topics that we selected for this week in our hot topic section now that we now do.
Moving swiftly on. Ian would have never let this go for our host. I'm just saying that. I'm just putting that out there.
Right, I'm gonna put the first one out here.
You know it.
Paul White came out and said his treatment on the Raw Legends night was the last straw for him in WWE.
Okay.
And I think he was talking about that Legends night in which the guys gathered in the ring and he was left sitting on the ramp basically. And he wasn't too happy about that. And he said that was really the moment where he knew between himself and WWE was done.
I have something to add to that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Straight away. When HR came into wrestling, that was the end of it all. As soon as Paul White knew that, all right, that sounds a little bit baby for me for a lad who's 7 foot and like never had a problem before, ever, or complained, but then knew that there was competition that was willing to pay X amount of money. That sounds like a bit of a cop-out to me, that it's like, okay.
It's also not true.
Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
What the truth of him jumping ship to AEW is a few years back, he got into business with 10-inch Hogan about the Big Show does boxing. And he went in and signed a contract and he declared bankruptcy and he had to sell his gaff because he owes some fucking bird from some production show about the Big Show gets into heavyweight boxing. And it was done via Hogan and that never panned out. And right now, he is in a deficit financially and as a legend and as a man who's limited in performance and also limited in crowd appeal, he can't turn around to Vince and say, I need to earn $2 million in the next 4 years or I'm fucked. So what he did was fabricate. Yes, he's fabricated an excuse as to why he had to jump to AEW. I'm sure he sat down with Vince and said, Vince, look, I owe this person a lot of money. And Vince said, well, I have to weigh up the options and I'd love to be able to hand you a shit fucking ton of money for the next 10 years. But I'm not a bank. Yeah, but I don't have that. Yeah, I don't have that unless it's an investment. We're a publicly floated company now. And I think what he said was, well, there's this company down the road who's throwing fucking money. And I think I can earn some money out there. And I think Vince said, go get your financial situation.
This is similar to your Brett theory. I love it.
Right? Go get your financial situation sorted, which he did. He sold his house. He's paid back a lot of that money. He's got a new job. He's walking around wearing a No BS t-shirt, and nobody from inside the company said, oh my God, the show is disgusted. Vince McMahon's so unhappy about Big Show. He's taken the name that he's earned off Vince McMahon with good grace over a long time, considering he was an original WCW fucking Hogan gimmick. And now he's earning good money while he's still healthy. He's paid off his debts. He sold his house. He's living in a more reasonable financial situation. And good for him. He's done good business by his own name. Good for him. And I think Vince is looking at going, well, this isn't like the Jericho thing where I plowed money into him and let him strip all my champs of their belts. Show's down there earning money and getting himself out of financial debt. Good for you, son. You get up, you get off your hole, you reach for the brass wing. You're now earning. No problem. Come back to me in 5 years' time and there'll be a welcome for you. You can come home whenever you want. But I don't have to pay your bills and I don't have to pay your debts. So everybody win.
What's the next hot topic? I like that, actually.
The next hot topic was Aleister Black's continued absence from WWE TV.
No, he's gone.
Yeah, well, it's kind of a strange one, really, because this is a guy who's a very, very good wrestler and also has a really, really good character. And just I think a lot of things have been unfolding there. I mean, I don't think he's been very happy since he came up to the main roster from NXT.
Let's kill two birds with one stone on this one, Noel. Him and Andrade. Let's use both of that because I'm sure that was one of the ones that you were going to.
Yeah, and we probably have to talk about Selena Vega as well because.
All right, well let's kill three birds with one stone.
I mean, I'm sure he wasn't happy with the way she exited the business.
This is purely Vince just suddenly one day not taking a shine to you because he didn't have a hand in creating you.
He was big. He was high on Vega though, wasn't he?
But Vince can just suddenly turn. Boom. That's it. I mean, we have to look at Vince these days and we look at him and we go, right, yeah, he's on the cover of Muscle and Fitness or whatever. But I mean, the brain surely, like the head is quite clearly gone a bit senile. Has to. I mean, it's age. Like that's not a knock on the old man. Do you know what I mean? In any way, shape, or form. But it's quite clear that he just sort of like he's high on someone one week and then it's gone. That's it. You know what I mean? Oh, Finn Balor, he's injury prone. Fuck him. You know? Well, look what he's doing now, boss. And like this is the good work that Triple H is doing now. Going, look, dude, I've got this guy. He's great, Vince. You gotta fucking give him a chance. Nah, he's not gonna work. You know? It's like I didn't create him anymore. And it's like Vince's, because they say that about people when they get older anyway. That but they tend to go back to what they knew. Do you know what I mean? They're always stuck in their ways.
Yeah. They lean on what got them to the show.
Exactly. Stuck in their ways.
I'm not sure. Like, I think this.
I don't know. I'm only spitballing. I'm not saying it as fact.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Because we're like conversing.
Yeah, exactly.
I think with him, like if you were to write down on a blackboard, here's the company. We have maybe what roster do they have over the three companies? And there is three, regardless of whether or not H thinks he owns and runs downstairs. It's still the boss man's fucking business. It's still his television. It's still his company, product. It's still his product at the end of the day. Now we say we've got maybe it's got to be 150 or 200.
Yeah, I think the number's in around 200 under contract.
Oh yeah, like I mean, you could run about 3 hockey teams or basketball teams out of it, like, do you know what I mean? Easily.
Yeah, so. I just you know, I find with Aleister Black, I just find it's one of those where it's like, I think if he was to go or if he does go, I could see him being a loss to the company because I think, you know, at a time where Undertaker has, you know, moved on and Kane has more or less moved on, these kind of darker characters, I think Aleister Black would be perfect to kind of slide into a similar role with that kind of dark character that he has.
Well, without mentioning names, Noel, and I won't mention names purely out of respect, but without mentioning names, I do know a lot of people that know him personally, and apparently, you know, this is a bombshell or a scoop or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. He's not too well liked by a lot of people. He can have a little bit of an attitude problem, and that's from good sources. So, I'm not saying
No, that's fair enough.
So it sounds to me like that's the issue there because. It's and that issue would make sense, right? Because you can't fault his work.
No.
So if it's an attitude problem, then we're getting somewhere. Like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. The last hot topic I put in there was more to trigger about you guys in terms of thinking about, you know, Bad Bunny to face the Miz at WrestleMania. And I got it even thinking a bit broader than that. Like, what's our feelings on celebrities stepping through the ropes? And these.
I don't know if my internet's back, so I don't know if I can speak.
No,
does anyone need my answer on that?
Thank Jesus for that.
Well, go on, give us your answer on it. What are you thinking?
Fucking bullshit. That's my answer on
Fucking bullshit.
Fucking bullshit. No, good motherfucker. You know I come here tonight.
Now I know my internet has just come back. Sorry, man. I had a bit of a cut-out situation.
I wish Sheiky was...
I'm going to be honest, which is...
Yeah, it's bollocks.
Sheiky rests in all our hearts. Come here to me. I think sooner or later we're going to get to a situation where they realise how much money is to be made off celebrities who want to dabble in the business. I see in 2 or 3 years down the line a network show, celebrity wrestling. I think they're going to let men have a go inside and outside the ring. I mean, they're going to the splinters coming in the future of professional wrestling.
I hope they get all the injuries that we've had as well.
I hope. Ian, you can't just throw on a tunic. You can't like in the military. You can't just throw on a general's uniform and pretend that you can lead armies. Exactly. This is bullshit.
Exactly. Like Jay, for example, like I'm a big fucking Iron Maiden fan, right? I can't just go and suddenly go and replace Bruce Dickinson for fucking a night.
No, and we've seen it with Judas Priest. Ripper was a brilliant singer, but you can't just step in the boots you can't fill. I think I see in not now, but in the near future, I see. Look, we've got Snoop doing it. We've got this fucking cross pollination of celebrities.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? Shaq, Snoop. There's obviously a market in America for reality. You know, wrestling with the stars job, and I see it as separate. If I hope they get it away from the men who fucking earned their spurs the hard way and put it over here, and we can watch it as this fucking circus 3-ring novelty act. You know what I mean? Fucking living La Vida Loca guy versus fucking Ice Cube
what about the scoop?
Hell in a Cell, you know?
On that you mentioned, Jay, what about the scoop that was actually kind of really fucking pushed from Triple H, Finn Balor and Conor McGregor about fucking the Finn Balor Conor McGregor thing? I thought that was quite interesting. Did you see that?
No, I didn't see that. But Conor's definitely going over sooner or later.
Well, it was done on. But he would actually. Yeah, I think with all the faults and all the shit that Conor McGregor gets,
he's a natural athlete,
and he would also go into it respectfully to try and learn the craft.
He also loves the business. Yeah.
Well, yeah, he loves the business. But the thing was, Fergal, kayfabe broke the fourth wall there. I must be Deadpool. There was a tweet put out about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it was the new line of toys that UFC have released, as me and Noel would definitely know, with the figures, and it was a figure of Finn and a figure of Conor, and it was in a wrestling ring, in the WWE ring, and I think Fergal actually turned around and said, "Make it happen, boss," or something to Triple H, and Triple H went, "Whenever you want it," and Conor McGregor copped onto it, and he goes, "Let's make it happen." So
it's happening.
And I just thought that would be really cool. Imagine like fucking seeing, for me, like me seeing Coach fucking even in that conversation, it's like, I salute you, sir. You know what I mean? It's kind of great to see. But thought that was a hot scoop, and it's still there for anyone to see if they want to go back. It's only about 2 weeks ago. It was on Instagram. It's on Conor's Instagram, and it's on Fergal.
But this is like what we were saying. We often bring up regularly how that the company athletes not allowed being used Twitter as their personal fucking place. Social media is now where kayfabe lives.
Yeah,
this is where matches happen. This is where things happen, and then we're slowly understanding why the boss said, "You aren't to be yourselves online. If this is now where we're going as a company, you got to be in character or get out," which is perfectly reasonable when you consider the business they're in. But it's 100% happening. There's a long legacy of MMA stars who cross over to the sport, and I can't think of one of them who tremendously failed, be it Severin, Shamrock. I'm sure Don Fry probably did a little bit of fucking pro wrestling. Kurt Angle from the professional, from the grappling aspect of things. These men are natural athletes. Wrestling is a step down from the threshold of pain that they're used to being in. Now, I'm not saying that it's any less of a painful threshold. It's one thing to fight 4 times a year, and it's another thing to fight 250 fucking nights a year, traveling the world with no sleep and no family around you. It's a completely different source of pain. But once you get used to and drunk of the spotlight and the applause, it's a natural evolution for some of these men.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
And it works.
Yeah, I suppose, as we spoke about before on it as well, with the evolution of these cinematic type matches and stuff like that as well, that's definitely going to lend itself to celebrities getting more and more involved.
Can we talk about that as well? Just in
Yes.
finalising Jay's just in finalising Jay's point there in terms of you know, I think someone like a Finn Balor would be a perfect opportunity for someone like for a Conor McGregor to come into the ring with, purely because of the athletic side of things. I think they would be able to make a bit of a kayfabe MMA looking thing, and then Devitt getting him in some sort of.
Well, he's the most legitimate snug worker the business has seen in the last how many years?
Since Bret
It's not like he can't go. He's the most decorated man from this side of the world to come out of Japan. It's not like he can't go. You know,
I would dare say it. I'm gonna say it. He's the most snug, neat wrestler, and I say neat. I use that word since Jim the Anvil's partner. So, here we go.
Did Jim have a partner? No, he had somebody in the shadow, didn't he? He had somebody used to wrestle in the shadow.
He did, Topper.
The Jim the Anvil. The Jim the Anvil Neidhart Foundation.
No, but I concur with Jay 100%. I think, and the reason I said that is because it's the snugness that doesn't hurt people. You know what I mean? And I like.
Listen, even if they weren't from the same geographical region on the planet, and even if they weren't running under the same flag above their fucking corner, I would still pair them up regardless. I don't give a fuck where Finn is from. He could, you know what? He could be from fucking London. I wouldn't give a fuck. Work speaks for itself, and
I'd agree.
He's exquisite. He lends legitimacy to what is seen as a fake sport, and Conor lends fake to what is seen as a legitimate sport. The marriage is perfect.
It's absolutely perfect. It's 100%. Now let's get back to what Niall mentioned there, and this video fucking technology.
Bombshell tonight.
I'm going to start off with it. I think it because I've actually had a couple of people text us and asked about what they were thinking about it. It's very fucking simple. I think it's hokey. I think it's bollocks. I think it was made initially for someone like Undertaker to be able to have that nice little kind of sign off with AJ Styles, which I appreciated because I think that was absolutely perfect and it was beautiful. I think it was beautiful. I think AJ was the right man for the dance. AJ is another person that would be perfect for Conor too in terms of that marriage, because I've always seen AJ and Finn as kind of very, very similar. You know, yeah, like I think that was made for the big man to fucking go out on his own terms to ride off into the sunset on the bike with the arm up,
and that was lovely.
And it was lovely, and I fucking
considering the time and the terms, he didn't have the fucking crowds. He was hurting. We had the documentary coming up. It was succinct. It was the cherry on the cake. The idea was made for him.
Like that man's brother was basically dying or dead that weekend, and yet he still fucking came to work. You know what I mean? And that's what people need to remember when they talk about the Undertaker. That man's commitment to this business is just absolutely fucking unquestionable. So
never mind, he loves it.
Yeah, exactly. But in terms of it being used as a thing, now that's where we have a conversation, because Randy Orton, as you all know, is one of my fucking favorite wrestlers, pretty much of all time, and especially of the.
I think around here, around these parts, he is the last link and the last vestige to a territorial wrestler at the apex and the youth. He is the bridge to a bygone era. Absolutely. We love Randy's work.
Now, I know that the match at Fastlane wasn't necessarily a video thing, but it was a fucking work thing, as in to be a movie. Randy Orton versus a 5-foot girl, and
it was a prop match. It wasn't. It
was. And you know what? Like, fair enough. Yeah, I do remember myself at the time. Anyone that knows me knows I'm a mad fucking horror fan. I was kind of like, oh, I like this kind of stuff here. But then I was like, hang on, this doesn't belong in wrestling, though. What's going on here? Like, this is stupid. But when we look at AEW's version of it now, and we go back and we look at some, I know we talked about this, but we look at like Sting and fucking Darby Allin, and it's just nonsense. It's just nonsense, because it kind of boils down to, do you want to take, like, does Vince want to take the wrestling out of WWE? Because, I mean, he's such a strange character, Vince, because he hates the word wrestling, yet like he's the biggest wrestling fan in the world. He's obviously fucking mental. You know what I mean? That's really what it boils down to with Vince. He's obviously mental in the head, and it's like, right, well, you saw the famous quote, the best match you ever saw with Dynamite Kid and Tiger Mask in Madison Square Garden, and he went, "Oh my God, this is the best thing I've ever seen." It's like, so his love for the work is there. And I think Jay has alluded to that on a number of occasions over these podcasts. But at the same time, from a business standpoint, he's like, "Oh, well, we can't have too much of that either." And I'm like, what do you want? Like, we can't have, like, I'd love someone to be able to I'd actually love to fucking sit, if there was one dream that I had tomorrow, right? That someone could say, right, there's a genie in a bottle here and you have 3 wishes and you get to fucking talk to someone, blah, blah, blah. I would love to sit Vince down and ask him the questions that we all want to know, right?
But
that would be it, because and I wouldn't do it in a disrespectful way, because I mean, he's the reason that we're wrestling fans. Like, let's be real,
He's the only man with a 3-part podcast that we did. I mean, absolutely. I don't think anybody else got 3 part, and bookended.
Absolutely,
I want to come in. I want to come in on you there, Ian. Though, right? I have a question for you, right?
Sure, yeah.
Have we not seen all the pieces of this coming before? We're accrediting this fucking the era gimmicks, fucking the Fiend, right? We're accrediting this to this no audience cinematographic style of pro wrestling, but it's just after occurring to me when you said it there, literally just live. You 4 years ago, maybe 3, maybe 4 years ago, a very good friend of mine, Leon Guilfoyle.
Shout out to Leon, by the way.
Fuck yeah, shout out to Leon. He, massive horror fan, massive horror fan. Married to a woman with a doctorate in horror.
Yes, absolutely.
I bought him a figure one time, right? And I think it was either Taker or Triple H, but it was one of those. You know the way WWE has been selling on the shelf,
the zombie kind of stuff.
Yes. And that was long before the fucking televised no people arena. Yeah. It's almost like the building of a channel has happened and they're putting shit on the shelf, like the He-Man crossover, crossover, the horror crossover, whatever's been lifted off the shelf. We love novelty things like that. When you see your favorite pro wrestler married into your favorite subtopic, and pro wrestling and horror, whether we like it or not, have always walked hand in hand. It's the reason the Taker has had a 25-year career or 30-year career.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
But this lends itself to this other aspect. I said I see 2 new avenues of pro wrestling going to fill the channel. I see one, this celebrity pro wrestling thing, like Dancing with the Stars, only pro wrestling with the stars. And another aspect, I see them continuing the cinematographic topic simply because it marries 2 things that he's already done. One, dabbling in cinema and building a production base. Like when he had fucking Hear No Evil or wherever it was 10, 15 years ago with Kane. And then he had all these movies.
Which was a very, very nice B movie, by the way.
All right?
Yeah.
100%. Now, he's already done this. He has the production. We've spoken another aspect of this, tying in many loose ends, that if you don't have a way to spend your money, America finds a way to take your money. Whereas if you're investing in new products and new things, you're keeping your money bouncing. Spend instead of lose. Why pay it in tax when you can pay it in people?
And the shopkeeper can chime in on that too, because that's a great point actually, Jay. Because you remember the film? I don't know whether you guys remember it anyway, but I remember watching it and showing somebody. I think it was a friend or whatever it was. I think I actually might have watched it with the boss, Rachel herself. The Call with Halle Berry, where she's like the call assistant, and there's like some sort of kidnapping that took place. Nobody knew about this movie, and then all of a sudden, it was advertised on Raw and all, but you didn't think twice of it. You know what I mean? Because you tend to zone out of these sponsors. Turns out WWE, it was the WWE paid movie.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it done pretty well. So I think that's a great point that you make.
Tying all the loose ends. Over here in column A, the guys producing movies, they're not great movies. He's not looking to be fucking Soda Spielberg. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Then 2, 5 to 7 years ago on our shelves in Smiths, we're seeing these fucking zombie and ghoul characters. 3, the plowing into these cinematographic matches. It's almost like he's toying in 2 aspects of his business that he's always had on. But you see the network plowing into different forms of entertainment and becoming its own thing sooner or later, almost like a TBS or a fucking, you know what I mean, like a channel.
Lads, how about we end the show on this topic, right? We probably have about 10 minutes left, right? So why don't we end on this one and address the elephant in the room? Because, you know, podcasts that are bigger than ours at the moment, like fucking Jim Cornette and all those, are actually talking about it. Realistically, in my opinion, and I think I've said this to you, Noel, and I think I've said it on the podcast before, Disney and NBC are battling for WWE. They eventually want this, right? Everything is being sold. This is going to be a thing that one of those companies are going to own eventually, right? Because they're buying up everything. And I think Jim Cornette said it correctly. You know, Vince is the type of guy that will look at what UFC was sold for, and if he gets $1 more, boom, you know what I mean. Vince is but the thing about it is, Jay, I know you're kind of making that face, but it is true, because it's the same way that when UFC was bought over, everyone worried about the Chinese buying over fucking UFC. Fact is, they've kept the main part in place, which is Dana White, who was the
tinfoil hat on. And when Shane disappeared for 5 years and went to China and started plowing into televisual aspects, and then sooner or later a consortium of people roll in and buy the UFC.
Exactly.
At the same time that Taker is standing in front of Brock Lesnar on a UFC telecast.
Yeah, well, there you go. You could put it. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's a great point, but I do think eventually, and I think Noel, we both agreed on this a while back. Why don't you chime in with that, Noel? Because you actually said that to me a while back too. That you think it's only a matter of time for the likes of Disney or someone like that owns WWE eventually, but they will keep someone like a Triple H as the guy in place. Do you know what I mean? Because they do, like, even with Marvel, Disney don't tend to like get involved with it. They still have their comics. Like, I mean, I buy the comics all the time, and there's no like, oh, here's a little Mickey Mouse fucking ad in the middle of it. Do you know what I mean? They keep it separate. They're very good at their business, Disney. That's why they're the fucking largest conglomerate in the world. Well, Club 33, baby.
Yeah, it tends to be an ownership thing rather than an operational thing.
Exactly.
They tend to want to go in there and kind of own the planet, but they don't necessarily want to get into the bones of the operational of it. You know,
yes.
If it's not broken,
bring us your product.
Yeah, bring us your product, but like, you know, you're going to give us your product, but ultimately we're going to own it. But I think that's for a time. That'll be a time, I would imagine, long after Vince, because I don't think that's a situation that would sit with Vince. I think very much it could be a situation that sits later on with a Steph or a Shane or a Triple H, in terms of, you know, expanding the product, stuff like that. But then again, I do think if it does move in that direction and that was to happen, I think that's where you're getting to see more of your cinematic type stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, I even mentioned that
H is the wrong guy then, right? Because H will be like, fuck off.
Yeah, but it's going to division. Well, it's going to subdivision.
I'm not too sure if that's the case, because if you remember, if you go back and you look
H
at the
directed it.
Yeah, that documentary. He was heavily involved in the Boneyard stuff.
Directed it, yeah.
And you can also see when you go back and you look at the Boneyard match, although visually and cinematic it was fantastic, there's still that bit of wrestling, that bit of old school work in there as well that hasn't escaped.
But that's with 2 workers though.
Yeah, but H would have been a big influence on that as well.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
But yeah, I just think it's I think that's, I mean, we spoke on a podcast before, Jay, recently, where we said it's probably not going to be too long before we see a CGI wrestler in a cinematic match.
But
that's the day I give up.
Yeah.
Look, but man, he's done all this. It's like Vince wants to be Walt. He's had his rock and wrestling cartoon. He tried Warrior with his fucking comic book. It wasn't great. How long before we see a Marvel universe of WWE made superstars in a comic book franchise? He's got his figures on the shelf, which is Crossing the Turtles, the fucking Ghostbusters, horror shit. he's got cinematographic matches. I don't think he wants to sell to be Walt Disney. I think he wants to be Walt Disney. He wants all of these aspects, and it's his company. He's plowing hard into every different franchise.
I think the problem there, though,
be
Jay,
it
is
Hollywood and his B movies.
Yeah, but I think the problem that you're having there is with the substantial growth of Disney and NBC and all these other big entertainment organizations. It's only a matter of time before he can fend that off in a market where everyone is struggling to try and win your entertainment time and money and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think eventually it will have to sort of, move one way or another. It stood on its own so long, and the WWE network stands up there and stuff like that. But when you look at the WWE network and then you look at Disney Plus, or you look at Amazon Prime, or you look at NBC and all these other things, it kind of really is, it's a big fish in our world, but it's a small fish in the world of entertainment.
Absolutely, Niall.
Yeah.
And on that point, like you look at, for example, like this week, it's just been announced that the Mighty Ducks series, like they've obviously excuse me, they've obviously taken what Cobra Kai done, and now they're like, all right, let's make a Mighty Ducks series of the kids growing up and stuff like that. You know what I mean? They're always thinking outside the box, and they always have a vault of classics that can appeal to the likes of us. You know what I mean? Especially in a world now, because we are talking in a world where I just thought I'd try a shout out to Don Marnell there with his old "in a world where whoever the fuck." I always loved that that "in a world" guy from the old VHS 90s movies.
In a world where Chris Hemsworth is putting on masks to play Hulk Hogan, who is going to be the next Disney?
But I think that's what it really kind of boils down to, like, because like we look at like even that's a great point that Jay made, even though it was a joke. Chris Hemsworth.
It wasn't a joke.
It's doing a series, an actual series about Hulk Hogan and Hulk Hogan's life. You know what I mean?
Thor is Hulk Hogan.
These guys have it nailed down.
Yeah, but I mean, even if you look at the success of, say, the Dark Side of the Ring series, what's to say that they can't go out there and make series about the good side of the ring? And it could be equally as successful.
Well, I would agree with that.
We already have that. We have 40 years of professional wrestling. Who bought all the tapes? Who bought all the old history? Who has the biggest archive of professional wrestling on the planet right now?
No, but what I'm saying, Jay, is if you look at, say, the success even of, say, Undertaker's documentary, The Last Ride, the 6-part series, who's to say you couldn't turn, say, the career of, say, The Undertaker, who's had a 25, 30-year career or whatever it is, who's to say that couldn't be turned into a TV series that tracks it from the start to finish, and would be something that we'd be very much interested in? Because, more often than not with wrestling fans, they're always very interested in the tragedy sometimes of these things. But there's a lot of good stuff in wrestling as well that would make for very interesting viewing. In terms of
100 years of glory.
Why can't we do a documentary on John Cena and CM Punk and all these guys that have done so much wonder?
They're all coming. They're all coming.
Well, I don't believe so. I think people like the dread. People like to hear that Kurt Hennig was a great guy, but he eventually passed. You know what I mean? I think it's a cultural thing. And I think it's down to the people that people want to feel sad, even though it's not necessarily something you would openly admit that you want to feel sad, but it's something that you watch and want to kind of go, oh, good Lord, Jesus, I feel bad about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but wrestling fans like a good story as well. They like it. They like that good failed story as well.
No, I know.
The Warrior Coming Home.
I do know
The Warrior Coming Home is arguably the most successful.
But there's a sadness in the end. That's what I'm saying.
No, there isn't though. There is. One day, every warrior must liberate his last breath.
But there's a sadness in the end because you look at the man walking out of breath, and his 2 little daughters are there. But Ian,
perspective is everything. Well, I don't see that. What I see is him walking out.
No, but his kids see that because his kids are now without a father.
But no, Ian, on his Hall of Fame speech, I didn't see that. I forgot immediately every piece of bullshit, every aspect of it, right?
Yeah, of
And what
course.
I heard, the first words out of his mouth in the Hall of Fame were, the most important thing in my life are the two girls sitting down there right now. What I hear is two 9-year-olds or two kids sitting there in a room full of applause. It might have been the day before their father passed, but this man standing in front of the world saying, I got to come home because I held my integrity together, and now I get to stand in front of all you people and say it was all for yous two. Everything was for yous two. And I see nothing but beauty in that. It's the same way.
Oh, I agree with that. I agree.
Like, perspective is everything. Do
I
you know what I mean?
100% agree with you there. Do you know what I mean? But like you can see my point, and I can see your point.
I can. No, I absolutely can.
You know what I mean?
But again,
look,
too many.
Without getting too much into like kind of sadness,
It's a different podcast.
Without wrapping up a show on sadness, we'll hand it over to the shopkeeper so we can wrap it up in terms of in a nice way. but I agree with you, Jay. Just wanted to say that I do 100%.
No, and I agree with you absolutely. But again, perspective is everything.
Yeah.
Well, as always, it's been a pleasure again, lads. So head over to YouTube, smash that subscribe and bell notification button. You'll also find us on Anchor if you want the audio versions of these podcasts. Always a pleasure. We love the segues, and we don't always end the way we start, but we always end with positivity, and we always continue to love the sport.
And we will always love pro wrestling.
Absolutely. Until next time, from myself, from the Dynamo, and from the DOGG, we shall talk to you again.